Hello and hi, my name is Connor. In this video, I want to talk about the new-ish album from Ichiko Aoba, which is titled Luminescent Creatures. Now, this came out on February 28th of 2025. However, it was not until, I want to say mid-March, until I actually heard the album for the first time. So I was in Tokyo, okay? And specifically, I was at Tower Records in Shibuya. Whenever I go to Tokyo, I make sure to visit every Tower Records I can because their selection is bar none. And I don't quite remember what I was there for that day. I knew I had like 5 or 6 records in mind. What I was not prepared to buy that day was that newest Ichiko Aoba album, which I'm obviously talking about right here, right now. While this album had been in my backlog for a few weeks at that point, there were just so many things I wanted to listen to, and on top of that too, I knew that this was going to be a very involved listen, so I really wanted to be in that right headspace and also in that right mood to actually listen to it. But much to my surprise, this started playing when I was in the store. And the wonderful thing about that Tower Records Shibuya store is that the sound system is everywhere. You can't escape it. When I was just perusing records, I think I ended up buying like 5 or 6 or maybe 7 or 8. I don't remember. It's really bad. This was playing the entire time. This, in its complete, I want to say 35-minute runtime, filled my ears the entire time. It was such a unique experience because I feel like this record in particular really lends itself to that kind of surround sound sort of stereo setup. It wants to specifically surround you and envelop you in its world. So anyway, long story short, I listened to the album, I loved it, I bought it. I think a few weeks after that, the Anthony Fantano review for this album came out, and I was so excited because while I do like his videos and I do like his opinion and I also like his personality, I was so excited for this in particular because he very rarely reviews Japanese music. He had reviewed Windswept at Dawn 5 years ago. Hats off to him for that. Fantastic Fantano take in that video, if I do say so myself. However, when he reviewed this album, he gave it a 6 out of 10. And he cited a lot of issues that he had with the album that I guess are fair to have. It's his opinion. I think that's totally fair. But I also think he's completely off the mark in a lot of ways. And now with all that preamble out of the way, this is what I want to talk about in my video. I feel like it is incredibly easy to misunderstand this album and also Ichiko Aoba's intention when making this album, that I don't think you can really review it. Now, obviously, you can have an opinion on it. That's the easiest thing in the world. I just don't think you can critically review this piece. Yes, I do think you can be critical of it, but I don't think you can apply a very reviewer mindset, very sort of rigid review structure to attempting to understand this album when you go through it. And that is really what I want to talk about in this video. I'm gonna put this down now, or actually, you know what? No, maybe I'll leave it right there. I'm gonna leave it right there so we can all look at it because it's a beautiful album cover. And I guess with that said, let's actually start with the album cover. In my opinion, this is a very good example of an album cover looking exactly like the music inside of it. I feel like the cover is almost like you, the listener, looking down at the music in front of you. One thing that I think a lot of people miss is that, yes, you are looking at water. When you look at water, it's going to be rippling, there are going to be waves, there are going to be all kinds of light distortions. Everyone on the planet has looked at water, yet it never looks the same to everyone. We all know what it looks like, we probably have the same mental picture of it, yet everyone looking at water sees something different because not one square foot or square meter of water looks the same at any one instance. And I think that is the reason why Ichiko chose this as her album cover. But again, I think Ichiko's intention is that you are not looking at a person, a place, or a thing. You are supposed to picture the atmosphere that can be filled up by a person, a place, or a thing. More specifically, very small things or, very relatively small things within that atmosphere. I think the best way I can describe it is probably like, for example, when you have like a perfect image in your head and then you say, I'm gonna draw it. And most of the time you just can't do it. You simply cannot do that one-to-one transfer of that thing you see perfectly in your head onto paper. It just, for whatever reason, does not work out. With that said, I think what Ichiko is attempting to impart on this album, and also through this album, is that this is what she sees when she looks at the ocean. Because of that, the whole point of the album is her trying to interpret what she sees in her mind into music. I think that is very much the theme and the intention of this album specifically. And in doing so, I think that she wants the listener to actually have that exact same experience that she very much obviously cherishes herself, which of course is why she wants to share it with as many people as she can. And now with that said, I would like to read one little excerpt that she had in an interview with a publication called The Cut. The album's title comes from bioluminescent plankton, which she discovered were some of the Earth's first organisms. I found this theory that they began to glow as a form of communication when they were alone and isolated, she explained. Whether we're laughing or crying, the genesis of our emotions as humans is the same as those ancient creatures deep under the sea. Here is why I think this album is very often misunderstood by a lot of people, but primarily music critics. I don't particularly think that there is an overarching story here, though I think there is one very prevalent theme throughout it. This album really acts as a pastiche of thoughts and memories that Ichiko Aoba has had. It's essentially her saying, I want you to see what I see. And the only way that she can accomplish that is obviously through music. I just really do not think that you can have this very rigid, objective methodology when trying to dissect this album or figure it out or critique it or tell people about it. You just have to say, go in and tell me what you think. And because of that, I think that's why you can't review it. Because frankly, I do think it is somewhat wrong to assign a score to an album like this. This album focuses a lot on things in her life, things not in her life, and things that come after her life too. And it is a series of thoughts and memories that have led her to think that music has always existed throughout time in memoriam, and that even includes small luminescent creatures who have always carried some, version of harmony and melody. And for that reason, because music has always existed, emotions have always existed, thoughts have always existed, and that will continue on no matter what. That, of course, plays into that overarching theme that I talked about a second ago. I think the theme on this album is that life is transient. Things are going to start, things are going to end, and things will start again. Music is always going to follow life itself. There is no beginning, there is no end, just like we ourselves are very much kind of in that flow of like the universe, in that we exist now, we did not exist before, and we do not exist after, and that's awesome. That's super cool, that is super unique, and for that reason we are lucky to be here when we are, even if the world isn't perfect, obviously. Much of Ichiko's musings on this album are that our lives are not our own and that we are all part of some larger, grander narrative. And of course, the way that she explains this is through the lyrics on this album. And so now as we move into the section of this video, I would like to say some of my favorite lyrics from the songs on this album. One thing that's super cool about this vinyl in particular is that it comes with the English translations of the Japanese lyrics. So, as far as I know, these are the official lyrics from Ichiko Aoba herself. I think they might even be maybe in her own handwriting. So I don't think it gets more official than that. Okay, so with that said, let's start with the first song with some actual lyrics, which is titled Mazamoon. Play with the world, an unexpected tunnel, the slumber of a passiflora and the voice of man. I am lost in somebody else's story, accumulating memories and tower, which of course then leads into the following song titled Tower. Seated on the windowsill, I stare at the night sky. Should the sound of wings raise my ears, my chest of dreams shall be opened, memories shaken off. Life quivers in time with city lights. Red eyes, a herd of Omu. There's nothing to fear. Stay. What was once known as magic, whether it be distractions or deceptions, it matters not if you remain. Should tonight be our last, dance with me once more. A small light, a secret voice. Please listen. I love you. And then from here, I want to read all of the lyrics from the song Flag. Is it true that we are reborn so many times over? Ocean breeze, burning eyes, heartbeat of a lighthouse. The footprints left on retinas, blink and they are interwoven. You are, all across from the left bank into the dark. These forms are not ours. Rise, a fulgor of light. And then the next song is titled Luciferine? Hopefully either of those was the correct one. I see it now, in my palm. Now, in this song nurtured, a child of the future, open its eyes, and eats the world, growing big and strong, to swallow stars and shout. It's all right, here, life can be found from long before words were ever born. And then next up, we have the song Sonar. Beyond the darkness, a glimmer of somebody's voice. I am here, although I know not where, and yet I hear it. A light that fell long ago pretends to be the soul breathing in your body. A seven-colored droplet trembles awake. The world could end tomorrow, yet still, beyond the darkness, a glimmer of first song. And then the final song is named Wakusei no Namida, which means a planet's tears. Blue, green, scattered, changing paths. Raise the sails, a melody of a million light years. Hello, goodbye. In dreams, I see you tenderly spread, the tears of stars. And when they overflow, interwoven in space-time, the ripples of stars. Here, blue, green, a story is born. My day, tomorrow, a melody of a million light years. Hello. Hopefully you can really understand how important that theme of life and music and how interwoven that is to Ichiko Aoba, and how that is the main theme that she needs the listener to understand. I think this is Ichiko saying, this is what I think. And because of this is what I want you to think so that you can see what I see. Hopefully that makes sense. I feel like I have poured a lot of time into this album and also reading her interviews and that. I think this is really what she's trying to show, and I really don't think I am overstepping any boundary whatsoever in saying that because it's so plainly spoken across this entire album multiple times. I think it's very obvious how she feels about music and life and just kind of how that's intertangled. Okay, so now we are back in the kind of subjective section of the video. I think at this point, I really want to say what I like about this album. Even though I feel like I've already made that somewhat clear, I would just like to extrapolate on pretty much everything I said. While I do really enjoy and appreciate the lyricism on this album, it is the general and the overall sound of it that is really what's astounding in my opinion. First and foremost, the quality of the sound recording on this album is absolutely incredible. It sounds like Ichiko is like holding you so close because she needs you to understand what she's trying to say so intensely. And it's even to the point where on songs like Tower, you can consistently hear her breathing through her nose because she is that close to your ear. There is a lot of white noise across this entire album, and it is also to the point where it's almost like an instrument itself because it is so omnipresent on pretty much every single song all the time. And it's surprisingly loud in that respect too, especially on the songs Tower and Persomnia. This is also something that I think is incredibly intentional because it almost takes on the sound of like sand just blowing past you in the wind, or maybe even stardust in the air, where it just feels like this large torrential wave of something incredibly small and something that takes up all of the space around you and is incredibly dense despite being so small individually. One song I want to speak on specifically is the song Sonar. There is something about this song that is like magic to me. The only way I can describe this song, and I don't think I would ever describe any other song like this, is it simply sounds like a song that I have been waiting to listen to my entire life. While I do primarily refer to that in regards to the melody on this song, that lyricism that I had read earlier is just so enrapturing. Once again, on this song, Ichiko compares words and voice and song and music and stars all to be the same exact thing. Things that have always existed and will always exist, irrespective of humanity actually being alive. Because it's such an innate part of life and nature itself. It is completely inescapable. On this song, she mentioned that someone's voice is guiding her through the darkness, just like stars do at night. The stars in this case being these incredibly sparse synths in the background that are acting like a sonar. There is just this one line that sticks with me and my, I guess, impression of this album whenever I think about it. And it's that line, "Beyond the darkness, a glimmer of somebody's voice." With that as the thesis of the song and maybe the album as a whole, I think the instrumental perfectly captures that idea and that statement because again, she wants you to see what she sees. That is incredibly important to her as an artist and especially on this album too. I have no idea how she accomplishes this, for me at least, but she does. One other thing that I think she does very well on this album is its length. There is a lot of contention about how long this album is. It is very short compared to her last album, which was Windswept at Dawn in 2020. Personally, I love the length. I do think the length is very indicative of the whole theme and motif and thesis of this album again. Music is fleeting, it is transient. However, because it's always with us, you can always go back to it. There is always a second chance to, enjoy it, to experience it. Because much like the ocean, it's always there. You can always return to it. And again, I think she is just the master of connecting sonics and lyricism and theming and whatever she sees in those synapses in her brain. And so with all that to say, you can't really review this album. This album is not something that is meant to be, set within a very rigid review scheme or, numbers or scoring. Like I said, it's fine to have an opinion. Everyone is going to have an opinion on everything they do. However, on this album specifically, I think you just have to let the sound and the meanings of the sound and the purposes of the sound wash over you, the listener, because I really think that is how Ichiko intended the listener to listen to this album. And again, this is the perfect cover because you can dive into the music, you can explore it, or you can let it suffocate you, which I think is happening to a lot of reviewers, especially Fantano, as I mentioned in the beginning, because he gave it a 6. What the hell? Because obviously, he did not get a proper reviewable experience out of this. And that's not even really his fault because it is primarily in a language that he does not know. He is essentially incapable of following and understanding the themes because he simply does not know the language. And again, not his fault. And on top of that too, in my opinion, he's never really been on the mark in regards to understanding lyrical themes and also analyzing lyrics on albums. He is really good at talking about the sonics of music. He's really good at that, music theory, fantastic. The man just does not have an English degree. Essentially, that is what I'm trying to say. He simply cannot delve beneath, the first 3 feet of the water. He just can't. And that has always been apparent in my opinion, with probably my favorite example being he gave Damn a 7. He gave Damn a 7. What the hell? And I'm just going to assume that you don't want to watch his video because, it's a whole video after this, and I don't blame you for, not wanting to watch 30 minutes on this one album. But basically, he gave this album a 6 because the interludes were very choppy, which, okay, sure, maybe. He also says that the songs are very underdeveloped in his opinion, and because of that, the melodies have very poor resolutions. And I think that is one that I don't really get or see no matter how many times I try to, because I've listened to this album 30 times, okay? I don't get that at all. I think that is personal preference, but again, I think he is in that mindset because he just is not going below 3 feet of the album. And in case you don't believe me, here is the exact excerpt from his auto captioning of his video into a online format. Here is essentially what he said. And I guess I shouldn't even say essentially because this is literally what he said in the video, okay? What the hell? Again, I think all of the major musical and aesthetic gears that made Aoba's last record so good are turning on this album too. But I can't help but feel like what she has pulled together here pales in comparison though. I do think the instrumentation and the vocals and the arrangements for the most part are there, but the shorter runtime, the choppier flows across this tracklist, and the more meager songs, I think, just give us a record that doesn't feel quite as wondrous or immersive, which personally, I don't think is the case. I think this is just as comparable as Windswept at Dawn, in my opinion, in a different lane and avenue, though I do still think it's on the same level. And then, of course, that's not all to say that Fantano is the only person wrong. No one else has been wrong. No one else has misunderstood this album. Because now, I would like to go over the Pitchfork review for this album. First off, they give the background info and the story of this album. Okay, super. And then they mentioned how it sounds. Okay, super. And then they did not say a single negative thing or word or adjective in this entire article. And then they gave it an 8.4. Which is a good score. But I mean, how can you not give something perfect when you don't say anything bad about it. That is simply something I don't understand, because in my videos, when I don't give something a 10, I cite the reason as to why. And then I try to say, if this had happened, I would have rated it higher. I try to give feedback on top of criticism, because I would love to have every artist make a perfect album. A lot have this year specifically. It's been really hard on me. I just really don't think that you can endlessly praise something and then not give it a perfect score. That is just so, strange to me. That is the purpose why I'm making this video. I think that reviewers are just too preoccupied with trying to apply that reviewer mindset to this album. But at the same time, I can't blame them for doing their literal job. If their job is to review and to evaluate and score an album, they should do that. I just don't think that you can accurately apply that mindset to this album and ones like this album specifically. This is purely an experience that everyone is going to have a different takeaway from, because it is such a personal experience to everyone who listens to it. And maybe if you haven't listened to this album, you should, because I think you will see what I mean when you listen to it. I really think you will. I do kind of see this album as a vibes-based sort of album, much like you could say the album When I Get Home from Solange, or maybe even The Age of Pleasure by Janelle Monáe is as well. And by that I mean, yes, they are songs and albums that can be evaluated on a rating scale. However, the overall experience and the vibe and the takeaway that you get from the experience and the vibe is more important than the actual lyrical content song by song, and how that all structures together within a 0 to 10 rating scale. I think this album is actually at its best when it's on shuffle, because here's my swimming metaphor, okay? You know where the water is and you know how to get there. It's right over there. But if you dive in, you're going to see something different every single time. These waves and these ripples will never be in this exact same pattern ever again. Never again. It's impossible. Fantano mentioned that he was upset at just how choppy the sequencing is on this album, and he just did not care for those short interlude songs. And again, I just really think that that is something that works in favor with the theme of this album, and obviously the aesthetic, right? Because when you listen to this album on shuffle, and because Ichiko takes us back to the same shoreline time after time after time, and there's always something new for us there every single time, because life is transient, music is transient, the seas are transient. And I think when you miss that very, important linchpin of a theme, you can't really listen to this album until you know that, until you realize that, until you find it for yourself when you look down into the water. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I think this video will be long. I hope you didn't get too bored, and I hope you listen to this album, and I want you to comment what you thought, because I think this is such a thought-provoking album, an experience that, like I said, everyone is gonna have something new, and I wanna hear what you know, because I can only know what I know. And with that said, thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.